Tucker, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, my first question refers to the importance of the international cooperation of the conservatives, of right-wing forces, because we do see how professionally and how strongly is the left-wing liberal networks are organized.
Yes.
I mean, look at the Soros Foundation, the Open Society Network. And some say, on the other hand as well, that there is an urgent need for the cooperation of the conservatives at the international level. But it's true that while the progressives, the left, they do have this internationalism in their veins, in their blood, we conservatives, we are much more local people.
Of course.
And that's why they do say you're not able to cooperate at the international level. What do you say?
Well, they're right most of the time. I mean, conservatives, small c conservatives, non-neoliberals, anyone who's not bought into the ruling ideology of the West right now is by definition more concerned with family, business, God than with political organizing. They believe in the individual, so they're never going to be as effective as a collectivist in organizing. And they tend to be nationalists. They're concerned with the countries they live in and were born in. And I think that's all admirable, but it puts them at a huge disadvantage. If the goal is to see who's more organized, the left is always going to win. I still think it's important for one very basic reason, regardless of how effective they are, say in influencing international bodies. Probably never going to be very effective at that. But it's important to break the spell. And the spell is the belief, which is wrong, that there's a huge constituency for neoliberalism. There isn't. Most people think it's absurd. The concerns of the people who run the West are completely divorced from the concerns of the people who live in the West. Whether they're left, right, or center, it doesn't matter. Most people don't think that finance should be the dominant industry in any country. It's not really an industry. It's a parasitic force, actually. Most people don't think that the family should be destroyed or religion is absurd. Most people believe in God, whether in an organized way or not, but they don't think the state is the last word on anything. And most people like their families and see them as a source of strength. So I think it's really important just to raise the flag and just remind people, whoa, the people who are in charge are a very small minority. Their views are held by only a tiny percentage of our population. Like, that's virtuous in itself, I think.
That's what we do see here in Hungary about the word that our most cherished values, God, homeland, and family, those values are under a very massive liberal attack.
Yes.
And to tell the truth, we also
But it's not backed by the majority of the population.
No, it's backed by the mainstream media.
Of course.
That's true, but what we do see, it has also a boomerang effect, because every conservative in Poland, in Hungary, in Spain, in France, in the US, in South America, they do feel this globalist attack against our most cherished values. And that is what we think here in Hungary, that because of those values are important for us, to protect our Jewish Christian heritage, to protect our national identity and state sovereignty, and most importantly, the family and the children, this can unite us. So effectively, this overwhelming liberal mainstream and its attack against our core values, this can unite us conservatives at the international level as well.
I think that's right. And I think the one political concept that most people understand intuitively is democracy, the idea that the majority in a country should have a say in how the country is governed. And the neoliberal project is inherently anti-democratic. And they've hijacked the word, as they do most good words, and flipped it on its head, and it means something. It means the opposite of what it rightfully means, which is the majority ought to have a say in how their country is run. The neoliberal project is by definition hierarchical. It's a small group of people telling everybody else what their priorities ought to be and using force if necessary, and it often is necessary, and they often use force to maintain message discipline on that. So just making that point, I mean, you don't even need to say, you don't need to be sectarian. We're right-wing, we're Christian. You don't have to say it, we're for the family even. Just say the project that we're currently being subjected to is not working. It doesn't serve the interests of the average person at all. It's run by arrogant, incompetent people who aren't even good at what they claim to be good at.
And it's anti-democratic as well.
But by definition, it's anti-democratic. It does not represent the majority of the population. And I personally think that's enough to win. You're lecturing me about democracy. Oh, you're against democracy, really? Let's just take a poll. What percent, in the United States, for example, The majority is not in favor of prolonging the war against Russia in Ukraine. They're not in favor of it. Republican, Democrat, non-aligned, they're not for it. And yet their leaders are allowed somehow to pretend that they're acting out of the popular will in this. They're not. It's an anti-democratic project. And I think just saying that out loud, it is measurably true. We don't need to guess about it because public polling exists. You're not doing the things that we want you to do, we hired you to do, therefore you're illegitimate in a democratic system.
Last question.
Yeah.
How do you see Hungary's role in this right-wing stuff, in this conservative revival? Because we are trying to do our best here with MCCFS, with CPEC Hungary, with all that we can do in order to show the world that we are here, Hungarian conservatives, and on the other hand, we can be the engine of this conservative cooperation at the international level with our friends from the US, with the American conservatives as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I dissent in one sense in that I don't see Hungary as particularly right-wing. I'm not even sure what right-wing means anymore. Hungary reminds me of...
Let's say common sense.
Yeah, it's the country I grew up in the 80s called the United States of America. I don't think your politics are very different from the ones I grew up under. I didn't grow up in a right-wing country. I just grew up in a kind of country that was more responsive to the concerns of voters and that had some common sense. We weren't required to lie every day of your life. Oh, a man can become a woman. Well, no, he can't actually. And so I'm not sure if that's left-right. It's kind of reality-based versus fantasy-based. It's democratic versus totalitarian, and I see Hungary as a much freer version of the United States. Your media landscape, I work in the media, have my whole life, more than 30 years, and so I think I can say with some authority that the media landscape here is much freer than in the United States. There's much more dissent. You hate Orban, you can put that on the front page of your paper. You know, no one pulls all your ads for doing that. In the United States, they would pull all your ads for doing that. There's no dissent. On the Ukraine war, which again, the majority of Americans don't support, 99.9% of media, including conservative media, support the war in Ukraine against the wishes of the population because there's no freedom of thought. They'll be penalized, and some, including me, have been penalized for saying something different. And so for them to tell us that Hungary is this right-wing, you know, it's Franco's Spain or something, it's like insane, actually. It's not at all. I'm standing in the middle of it right now. There are things I like, there are things I don't like. I'm not shilling for Hungary. I'm not Hungarian. I don't speak your language. I'm not from here.
You can learn it. It's quite easy.
Just give me 30 years.
I will give you lessons.
And have 15 points in IQ.
You know what was the joke from the Pope, actually, that what kind of language is spoken in heaven? Hungarian. Because it takes an eternity to learn it.
That's fair. Because it's harder to get there than a camel through the eye of a needle.
That's for sure.
Yeah. But I'm not shilling for Hungary. I'm not being paid by Hungary. I just have experienced it, a bit, and it's nothing like its depiction in American media at all. In fact, it's so far from the reality described in, say, the New York Times that you can only conclude the New York Times is lying. It's not the first time. And it's not just the New York Times. It's NBC News. It's our entire media landscape is lying about Hungary. Well, why? Well, they hate Hungary because it self-identifies as Christian. Like, it's kind of that simple. Not because it's so right-wing. People have children out of wedlock here. You're not required to go to church. Most Hungarians don't go to church. It's not a theocracy. I mean, that's ridiculous. Your president of Hungary is not even the same religion as the majority of Hungarians. He's Protestant. Most of them are Catholic. So that's all not true. But the fact that the Hungarian constitution and the prime minister of Hungary both identify the country as, in some sense, Christian, is so offensive to Western leaders that they're trying to destroy Hungary. And it's, again, it's not my fight, but I think it's worth telling the truth about it. That's exactly what is going on.
Thank you very much for your work that you are trying to, at least to help Hungarian conservatives and to defend common sense in general.
I mean, I'm against lying. I'm often wrong. It's not that I'm always right or I always have common sense. Sometimes I don't. But if I know something's a lie, I'm not going to repeat it because that's totally wrong.
And the fake news media just keeps on.
Oh, they're liars. They know they're lying and they do it anyway. It's disgusting. And they're not journalists, by the way. They're propagandists and they should be ashamed.
That's true.
Thank you
very much for your time.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the video messages you sent to CPEC Hungary.
Oh, and I meant
heard that maybe next year we can welcome you in person.
Well, I'm always happy to come to Budapest and I like your food. I don't care what anybody says. I like the food.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Taka.